Okay, I think we are live. So I guess we're going to start our panel. The panel today, we're talking about comics and graphic novels. And we're going to be talking about indie publishing and how to get things going outside of corporate comics. And we've got some great guests, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Madeline, can we start with you?
Sure. My name is Madeline Holly Rosing. I'm the writer-creator of the Steampunk Supernatural series, Boston Metaphysical Society. For those of you not familiar with the story, it's about an ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, and a genius scientist who battles supernatural forces in late 1800s Boston. And a quick shameless plug, we are currently on Kickstarter, so you can check us out there.
Let's back it.
There you go.
Nathan, can you introduce yourself?
I can. My name is Nathan Luth. I am the illustrator, co-creator of Impure Blood, another Steam fantasy epic about a half-human gladiator who's freed from captivity by a mysterious young lady because she's on a mission to track down the last full-blooded member of his kind. We just launched our third Kickstarter in the graphic novel series just today. It's launch day for me. So yeah, I do hope anybody watching will go check that out.
This is a busy day.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you both for taking the time to do this panel today. I'm your moderator. I'm Jock Wyatt. I've done some indie comics. I have a graphic novel, juvenile graphic novel out from First Comics called Alien Bones, available on Amazon.com. And I've done some writing for IDW on Star Wars Adventures and a couple of the titles, and am a big indie comic fan and supporter. And so I'm really pleased to be with these two awesome panelists. Okay, well, since you guys both have Kickstarters active today, let's talk about that right from the top.
Okay.
Why? Well, first of all, why Kickstarter? You both are on Kickstarter as a platform for comics, as opposed to Indiegogo, as opposed to any other crowdfunding source. Why specifically Kickstarter? And would you advise it generally to everyone, or is it on a project by project basis? And Madeline, let's start with you.
Sure. Kickstarter has been my platform of choice. This is my 9th Kickstarter. And one of the reasons being is that unlike other platforms, which are very good, Kickstarter has a built-in backer community. You really can't think of, it's really the community that drives Kickstarter, which is why it's also important as an indie creator that I be part of that community by backing other projects and helping other projects along. Indiegogo, Patreon really don't have that kind of community yet where you can tap into it. A good example is I follow, I don't know how many hundreds of people within the Kickstarter platform, but often on the weekends, even when I'm not running a campaign, I will get notifications of projects they've backed. And so I'll see over the weekend one person backing 12 different projects. And I call them my weekend warriors who come on in because like, oh, it's Friday, it's Saturday, let's go check out what's on a Kickstarter and what's fun over there. And yeah, they really are. They're the weekend warriors who come in and, they may not pledge a lot and that doesn't matter because every little bit helps. And I think Nathan will completely agree with that.
It's true.
Well, let's hear if he does. Nathan?
So I'm not evangelical for Kickstarter over any of the other crowdfunding platforms. I think like they all certainly have their pros and cons. I think, as Madeline said, Kickstarter certainly has the, hey, guy you liked just launched a new thing, cornered. But I also see a lot of people make the day-to-day recurring content thing work on Patreon. So, but as far as why crowdfunding as opposed to trying to find a publisher, for me that's no question. it is crowdfunding in general is the democratization of for the creators. You don't need to find a publisher, you don't need to find a gatekeeper in order to get your stuff out there. All you need to do is find enough people who like your stuff and are willing to, give you what you deserve for it. And secondly, it's the diversification for crowdfunders. If you're working for a publisher, if you're doing work for hire stuff for a client, which I did for the first 15 years of my career, you're kind of dependent on one or a handful of clients to pay the bills. Whereas with crowdfunding, you're dependent on maybe a couple hundred people, but if one of them decides, they're not gonna, one of them decides that they're out, then it's like a lot less of a deal. And if you want any further proof of that, you need look no further than what happened with Marvel DC last summer when all of them said pencils down, and kind of left all their creatives working for them in the lurch. Whereas on the crowdfunding circuit, I'm sure there were certainly individual backers that fell off because whatever unfortunate thing happened and they lost their jobs or something like that. But by and large, again, that's 1% of your revenue as opposed to 50, 100, 33% of your revenue, something like that. So and yeah, I am definitely evangelical when it comes to crowdfunding, because there's just no other, like, hands down. It not only does it provide you with a method to get your stuff out, well, exactly that. It provides you with a method to get your stuff out, as opposed to finding someone else who's willing to pay you to draw their stuff for them. So again, there's no question. It's just a better all around.
So yeah, so what I'm hearing is you prefer self-publishing, and specifically crowd funded self-publishing, to as opposed to working with indie publishers or or third-party publishers or any other independent way to get your comics out.
And sorry, I mean, I don't want to bash publishers in any way, shape, or form. Many of them are lovely people. I've known other creatives like myself who have very wonderful friendships and have great relationships with their publishers. But for every one of them, I feel like there's like 9 out there who are trying to take advantage of you and give you the impression that you're just lucky to have a publishing deal in the first place. So so like I said, I don't want to be down on publishing. For me, yes, I would so much rather be the captain of my own ship than let anybody else do that, steer the boat.
Yeah, I'm doing both, quite frankly. I started with crowdfunding and self-publishing just to start building, to be able to do something, to produce something. Because in the early days, I did try to look for a publisher to come on board, and that didn't work. So I said, okay, there's this Kickstarter thing, crowdfunding, let's try to do that. And it ended up being a career. But in the meantime, as I grew, I knew I wanted to expand beyond what I could do by myself. And that's when Sourcepoint Press came along, and they have been absolutely terrific. So it is creator owned. I retain the rights to all my IP, so that's never an issue. And I'm in comic book stores now where I could never do that by myself. And so I've been, built a great relationship with them. But yeah, I'm still crowdfunding. I mean, that's how I get stuff made. I get it out there, and then they distribute it and get it much wider than I ever could.
Well, I have to say that I think that the crowdfunding definitely has shifted the game in terms of indie publishing and self-publishing, because I feel like, you know, in the sort of in the older days, it was either you were making corporate comics or you were making indie comics, and indie comics was one kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It was like that Eastman and Laird kind of, you know, thing, right? Pre-Archie, Eastman and Laird kind of thing, right? And the indie comics market has really fractured quite a bit. So that there's the creator-owned publishers where you know, it's almost like a distribution pipeline deal only, and they're taking out their expenses, but that's basically it. There's then sort of indie publishers who, you know, you give them 50% of the IP and they handle the publishing, the printing, they pay the artist, they pay you, but you've given away half of ownership of your IP. And then there's self-publishing where you're going out of pocket, and there's self-publishing where you're crowdfunding. And it feels almost like different people are choosing different paths based on what suits the creator in a certain sense. I mean, is that what you'd say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm the captain of my ship. I decide where it goes, and that's the way it should be. And you know, we're diversifying because of that and building a much larger fan base. And I kind of think we're doing very well on Kickstarter, and I'm pretty sure, you know, the Sourcepoint distribution, you know, plays a role in that. You know, I'm more known than I was before, even though I've been doing incrementally better each time. It's just, you know, you just do a little bit more and it mushrooms from there. So yeah, no, it's worked out for everybody. But yeah, I mean, you can do so many different kinds of deals with independent publishers. It just depends on, you know, what you want. You know, what kind of deal you want.
and I feel like I've given a bad impression here, and so let me quickly walk back. I'm not anti anything, and I agree 100% with what Doc said about, you know, find your own path, do what works for you, and you know, you are still the captain of your own ship, even if you do choose to go with an indie publisher. And
absolutely.
Stuff like that. And for the record, I have heard. I don't know personally anybody from Sourcepoint Press, but I have heard nothing but good from all the creators that work with them. So they definitely seem to be doing it right. I just do know from personal experience and a few other horror stories that they're.
Well, you also come from a very different place than I come from. You were working with in the industry as an illustrator, you know, getting the regular paycheck and the defined contracts. And me, I'm just like, I'm gonna go write this thing at home and go hire an artist. And it's a very different balance. And so I can definitely see why, you know, you want to do what you want to do now, which doesn't mean you may change your mind later. You know, a couple of years from now, you may say like, okay, I've done this for X amount of time. Let's go down this other path and see what goes there. I mean, you never.
That's entirely fair, man.
You don't know. And I had no idea 5 years ago that I was going to have a deal with Sourcepoint. Not a clue. Yeah. And I knew them, and I knew Travis, I knew all the guys, you know. So.
And let me also recognize that you are much further along in your self-publishing indie creator journey than I am. So I will total respect all around here. So
I also want to mention, at least I feel like it's evolved in, I would say, definitely the last decade, maybe even the last 5-6 years, where initially I feel like when crowdfunding first came on the scene, you know, there was a sense that crowdfunding was for the projects that were so tiny that no publisher would pick them up, you know. Whereas I feel like that has evolved to the point where crowdfunding isn't. I mean, when Todd McFarlane decided to release a Spawn toy, he crowdfunded. You know what I mean? Like,
oh my God, yeah.
I mean, he did not. You know, it's that direct to consumer, that pipeline that goes from creator directly to the consumer, that makes it so appealing that you're sort of cutting out some of the, I mean, I don't want to say red tape, but some of the I don't want to say unnecessary, but you're in a way shortcutting directly to your reader in a way that you can't do in other kinds of self-publishing.
Right.
What would you say so, Nathan?
Let's see. I think the bottom line question is where is your time best spent for you? If you can find somebody, because all right, so we're creatives, right? Like we all want to sit in a room and do our creative task, like our writing or our drawing or whatever, and let somebody else handle the business side of things. Um, so I guess the and I know I definitely went through a journey of like I don't want to handle the business, I don't want to do the marketing, I don't want to do the financing and all that kind of thing, um, until I eventually landed on the place of if I want to do the stuff that I want to do, then I kind of need to. So if I would say, but and like I said, I totally respect the perspective and understand the perspective of getting somebody else to do that for you so you can do the thing that you want 100%.
Yeah.
So I guess like I said, at the end of the day, the question is what's is your time where's your time best spent? Is your time best spent doing the thing and then outsourcing the business administrative things to another person, even if you get a little bit less of the cut and you have to, give away some, or you have to license out some of your intellectual property rights? Or is your time best spent managing the whole ship yourself? And what is going to get you furthest along? What is going to get you furthest along? What is going to generate you the most revenue? And where is your time the most valuable? And, like that is a question that each and every, again, this is in the creative field, we kind of each have to suss out our own paths a little bit, and I think that's kind of the underlying question that we all have to ask ourselves.
Yeah, and the circumstances. I mean, that answer
And
may
that, yeah.
change. I mean, Madeline sort of indicated this, but that answer may change for any given creative over the
Yes.
course of their career multiple times. And you just sort of have to be flexible and shift around. I agree with that completely. Well, let's walk it back a step and let's talk about why comics, why graphic novels. I mean, certainly as artists and writers, you could have applied your talents in any direction, any other direction, but why comics specifically? And as a sort of subset of that, or as a sort of follow-up to that, what comics and graphic novels influenced you most and your art, personally? Madeline, why don't we start with you?
Well, I hope I got all of that because you guys were like gone for a little bit for me. I
Yeah, I saw
completely
you
lost
bumping out, yeah.
sound. Yeah. Um,
I can repeat. Do you need me to repeat the question?
yes, please.
Okay, so just asking why comics? Because you could have been writing for any other medium, novels, television,
Okay.
anything. But why
No,
comics?
you're gonna.
Oh,
This is really unstable.
You know what, Nathan? I think we're going to start with you
All right.
on this
Yeah.
question
If
while
we
we
can get
get
it
our
back.
tech to line up.
Yeah.
Why comics and what comics influenced you?
Oh man, my journey on that was kind of interesting. I was actually kind of in denial about wanting to do comics for the longest time. Uh, I remember uh, in art college, I opted for my art college actually offered a major in comics, but I opted for an illustration major because at the time I told myself that that was the more marketable major. But at the same time, I was always hanging out with the comics people. They were kind of my crowd. That always spoke to me a bit more. I was always reading that kind of thing, and so it wasn't until like a couple years after college that started out doing comics for fun, like side projects for with whatever friend or what have you. But then it wasn't until I started Impure Blood that I was actually kind of like, maybe this is, maybe I do want to do this as a career. So I I don't know how to describe it fully, but I was in a denial about wanting to do it for the longest time. So, but as I kind of studied it more academically, I came to the conclusion of that it is an amazing art form. Uh, it's static images, but it also incorporates the illusion of time passing. And not only that, the like every page has multiple compositions to it. So not only do you have each panel composition, but you have the composition of the entire page uh, put together. So like it works both as a whole, and then it has to work both as a whole and then as the pieces if you wanted to get the eye to flow across the page properly. So I mean, I think it's an amazing medium in that regard, but then also it's somewhat interactive
Yeah.
because the reader can actually uh, control how the pace of how fast they're reading. Whereas like, novels is, kind of a steady across the page kind of thing. But like if a reader in comics, if the reader wants to languish in a particular moment or really take, like if there's a giant splash page and they want to take in the vista, they don't have to turn the page in a certain amount of time. They can, like let their eye drift around and take in the whole thing. So uh, I love comics because it is a medium like no other. Static images put together to create time, multiple compositions, and kind of like it's all a beautiful puzzle, man. So I and there is there yeah, okay, so I'm getting in a place right now, but yeah, no, like it's a puzzle, and I absolutely love figuring out the page composition. It is just like the most intellectually stimulating thing that I can do to figure out how to move the eye across the page, and I absolutely love it.
Well, that's
Um,
fantastic. And so what comics influenced you the most or continue to influence? I mean, I see your collection on the shelves behind you, so I have maybe a few hints,
yeah, right,
but go ahead
right.
and let me know.
That's a lot of the superhero stuff. You can't see it here, but my very first comic club, I have a framed print on the wall over there of Calvin and Hobbes. Bill Watterson. I fell in love with that when I was 6. I found one of my nana's old collected books, and it was just black and white. So at the time, I took it for a coloring book. So I actually colored in quite a bit of the Calvin and Hobbes, but was reading it all the while. Loved Spaceman Spiff and the dinosaurs and all that kind of thing, and it kind of stuck with me. It kind of like became my thing, and it was kind of the thing that my adults knew to get me for a Christmas present. They could give me Calvin and Hobbes, and I like to think that I've still to this day internalized Watterson's sense of comedic timing, and kind of the way that he is, again, that he moves people from panel to panel. So that moving into my adolescence, I was gonna date myself. I was a teenager in the '90s, so a lot of the '90s guys were definitely there for me. Mark Bagley, a little less so Jim Lee, but I got into Dragon Ball Z, and actually my first anime love ever was Sailor Moon. So so those were an influence, and then as I grew up, I got into Evangelion, Final Fantasy, and right now my thing is like Saga. I'm very much into Saga. It's just like I cannot get enough of this. So yeah. So in no in that's the short list at any rate. As far I don't really claim one particular influence. I try to make myself an amalgam of, like everything that I take in. Like I'll take this from here and that from there, and kind of, squish it together into what makes up my style.
That's fantastic. Now,
Uh,
Madeline, same
I'm
for
I'm
you.
back. I'm back.
All
Yes.
right.
Yay!
Yay.
Awesome. So same question for you. First of all, why comics? Because you could be writing in any medium, but you
Correct.
chose comics. And as a subsection of that, what comics influenced you the most personally, both personally and also in your work ongoing?
Well, I came to comics very late in life. Though my brother probably has one of the largest collections of graded Daredevil comics in the United States. It just
Wow.
superhero. It just I didn't care. I just didn't care. Flash forward many years, and I was getting my MFA in screenwriting at UCLA, and I wrote a TV pilot called Boston Metaphysical Society, and it had done fairly well in competitions, and it was rad. But this was before steampunk was really any kind of mainstream, the aesthetic was mainstream at all. And so it was suggested to me that I turn it into a graphic novel, to then use it to resell it back to film and TV, which happens all the time. Well, in the process of doing that, I discovered that I really like writing comics and I love the community. And though prior to that, I did take classes on how to write sequential art because I was writing screenplays, and though they're both visual, it is a different medium, and you have to respect that. So I had some really good mentors in and outside of my class who helped me develop the story and who introduced me to comics like Y the Last Man, Astro City, uh, God, Watchmen, a whole slew of them. And after I read them, I was actually kind of pissed off because no one had ever told me that indie comics existed before and that they were really cool and had these interesting stories, and they may or may not have to do with superheroes, but if they did, it was from like the flip side. It was like a totally different point of view. And I'm like, okay, this I like. And the rest is pretty much history. I just stayed in it, and I can't say that any one comic influenced it other than it was the fact that all these stories were out there and I fit into this world. And it was, and it's been a lot of fun. Even though I have gone out into other mediums, I do have a prequel novel and an anthology of short stories and novellas to the original graphic novel. And we are in pre-production for the first Boston Metaphysical audio drama, which we just cast the leads, which I announced yesterday.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
That is so freaking cool, by the way.
Thank you. I'm very fortunate in that I had met Eddie Louise and Chip Michael at they are my script editor and my sound engineer and composer. They have had their own audio drama on, for 6 years called Sage and Savant. So they know the ropes, they know how this all works. So they're teaching me. And so I've got a great production team behind me. And yeah, we'll be actually going to Kickstarter with that in the fall. But yeah, it's just expanding the universe, and and it's actually, to me, it's a lot of fun to write in these different mediums. It's like an exercising a different part of my brain. So I just do it.
Fantastic. Well, now let me ask you both this. What advice would you give to somebody who has not yet published an indie comic, is thinking about, either this person has their creative in place, or perhaps this person just loves the medium and would like to engage with it? What advice would you give to people first, just now, on the verge of entering indie comics? Nathan, let's start with you.
Let's see. If you're working with a collaborator, get it in writing. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. And I guess, yeah, the first question you have to ask yourself, the first question you have to ask yourself is, are you hoping to turn this, what are you hoping to turn this into? Like, is this going to be a business that you're both actually making money with, or are you just doing this for funsies? So if you're just doing it for funsies, get out there and do it. Like sit down like an hour a week to make it happen. If you're trying to make money and turn it into a business, get yourself, you're gonna hate this, but get yourself some business education, because worst case scenario, you're working for, well, worst case scenario, either you're going to be working for yourself, in which case you're going to need that information, or you're going to be working for someone else, and that knowledge is going to keep you from getting taken advantage of, and or make you that much more valuable to your client or employer, because you know how the game works. So
Excellent. Madeline, how about from you? Advice for upcoming or aspiring creators on the verge of entering indie comics?
I guess I would ask the question of like, are you the writer or the artist, or are you the writer artist? Do you even know how to write comics? Maybe you should go take a class first, meet people, go to cons, introduce yourself. I mean, I can tell you, after I took the class, I went to cons and met artists because I was looking for an artist. And so people get to know you and know that you're real. And Nathan's absolutely right. Once you find someone, get a contract down so everyone knows exactly what's expected of them, and then you can go have fun. Because all that worry is put away. And then, like, I agree with Nathan, depending on what you want to do, if, even if you just want to have fun with it and then eventually make it a business, because, maybe you decide you want to do that. Some of the practical things is, try to self-fund that first issue, and then go out and share a table at cons when we've got cons back again, so you can split the costs, so you're not spending a lot of money, and get out there and meet people and make friends. I'm going to say this over and over again because it's getting out there, meeting people, making friends. Those relationships as you grow are going to be critical. Absolutely critical. I mean, Nathan can tell you that it's like when he launched, he got a message from me going like, I assume we're going to be cross-promoting, right? And he was like, well, yeah. And yeah, because, we have, it fits, our comics fit for the demographics we're working with. And other people will get that well. And I'll get that as well from other people going like, hey, and you build on these relationships. And by doing that, it helps us all rise up.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's called community
100%.
for a reason.
100% cosign. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is, you used the term cross-roading. What did you mean by that?
Oh, cross-promoting. It could be a couple things, but specifically, we will, whenever we do an update that's organic, not arbitrary, but an organic update to our Kickstarter, we'll add one or two, oh, hey, here's the information about our newest stretch goal. And by the way, there's these other cool Kickstarters going on right now. And then I'll mention Nathan and somebody else, with the links and pretty pictures and stuff, and to encourage people to go over and pledge to his. And then he'll do the same thing for me.
Do you time campaigns together so that you can cross-promote intentionally, or is that just something that happens organically?
I haven't
The
timed
second
any.
one, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I like what you were saying about, because I feel like networking is important in basically, I mean, almost every industry, I would assume.
Yeah.
Certainly any sector of the entertainment industry, certainly. But I mean, I think also just generally, for whether you're in academia or whether you're in, the stock market or, whatever business you're in. But one thing you said was meet people, make friends, as opposed to just networking, because I feel like often networking can feel like this antiseptic or this sort of cold, like calculated, like who do I know that can do something for me? Like, or who,
Yeah.
what do I need done? Who can do that thing? How can I meet that person and manipulate that person into doing that thing? And I think that when you're being networked in that way, like when somebody walks up to you at an industry event and is attempting to network you, like it's a, you become a piece in their network. It feels very objectifying, and it feels very,
Yeah.
I don't know, very like you're being used. But by the same token, it is a community. We do need each other. And so like organic networking is really just making friends. It's being in a situation where you can, exactly what Madeline said, where you can meet people, make friends with them, and organically grow a community, as opposed to sort of that sort of, I don't know, business school idea of a network,
Right.
in that context. What
Testify. Like the best thing piece of advice I have regarding networking is don't try to network. Like just try to make friends or just talk to people. And as you said, the key to that is being organic. Like if you meet a guy that fits for like a thing that you have, then great, float the idea past him. Or better yet, the best way to do that is to say, hey, this guy over here needed artist. This guy over here is an artist who's looking for a writer. Let's, kind of like make friends, help other people. Don't think of it, don't try to network. Think of it as helping other people.
Be a connector.
Yes.
Yeah.
That sort of karmic sense of put good
Mhm.
things out and good things come back around.
I
That's
mean,
right.
that's exactly how how I got both my artists. Emily was a acquaintance of a friend of mine in my sequential art class. I had looked for artists. I'd gone through DeviantArt. Oh my God, I looked for like almost a year. Almost had some people on board. It didn't work out, and then
Sorry,
she
strong
said,
feelings about DeviantArt, but yeah, sorry, go.
and
Sorry.
then she, and then she says, "Oh, I might know this girl who just graduated from art school." And I says, "Okay, let me," I gave her, I paid her to do 2 script pages for an audition. She nailed it. That was Emily Hugh. I immediately put her under contract. I says, "You're mine now, completely." And God bless her, she finished and then moved on to bigger and better things. And then by that time, I had been in the comics community for a good 5 years. So people knew me, and so they knew I was looking for another artist. So I was at a small steampunk convention up north, and another friend came up and said, like, "Hey, have you thought about Gwen Tavares?" And I said, I don't know Gwen. And he says, "I think she'd be perfect for this." I says, "Okay, I'll look her up." And so while I was looking her up, she actually contacted me and sent me her portfolio, did the same thing, hired her to do a sketch. She nailed it. The rest is history. I mean, she's working on our 4th sequel together right now, which is the one that's up on Kickstarter, the Book of Demons. But yeah, I mean, that was all because I'd spent time at these cons and talking to people and making friends. And so when word got out, I mean, I actually got a new artist on board pretty quick. uh, Happy me. I was very happy. And it's worked
That's
out ever
awesome.
since. Yeah.
Okay, well, we only have a couple minutes left, but I just want to briefly ask you, specifically in the world of indie comics, what are your goals moving forward? Nathan, let's start with you.
Oh boy. Let's see. After this, the third volume of Impure Blood is out in the world. I have one more that I'm planning on launching in September, and then I'm planning on launching a new series, kind of a post-apocalyptic urban fantasy about a lost paladin, and that is I'm planning on launching in February of 2022.
Awesome.
That's
Madeline?
great. Wow. I have so many, so many spinning plates right now. Uh,
Would it be?
I will probably, Well, the Book of Demons ends open-ended, where we're going to go to a certain place. I don't want to ruin the ending for people, and bring in an old favorite from the original 6 issues. I do that a lot. I bring in people, go away, they come back, and that'll be a very definitive 3 to 4 issue story arc. I don't know what the story is yet. I'm not there yet. But yeah, I still have the audio drama is, next on the list to start recording. And I have to finish. I have 2 more novels. I've got the first one done in a Boston Metaphysical trilogy. And that I'm hoping next year sometime, but it'll probably be pushed back just because novels take a long time. Yeah.
I can imagine they do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we got to wrap it up. But before we do, for anyone who has recently joined or anyone who didn't get it the first time, can you give us... Oh, yes, Nathan.
Sorry, I think I've been watching the Toast A channel in the Discord, and I think PewCat has a question for us. I'm assuming it's for us anyway. PewCat asks, how do you go about dealing with the legal stuff, i.e. protecting IP, distribution, etc., as an independent? So wanted to make sure we got in that question before we wrapped it up here.
Yeah, okay. Lawyers.
Yeah,
lawyers.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, ask. A lot of lawyers will, at least, most lawyers will at least consult with you for free. And going about finding a lawyer, I would recommend, let's see, my local community has a organization called Springboard for the Arts, and their entire role is to connect artists and creatives with, like lawyers, accountants, it's contract reviewer people, etc. So I would check around your area to see if there's anything like that, like any kind of arts organization or arts center kind of place might be your first lead.
Yeah, California has something similar. I think it's Cal Arts or something like that. They will hook you up. I work for they work for me rather. I work with Council for Creatives. Mm-hmm. They're here in Los Angeles, and they actually have a very reasonable subscription service for document review and things like that. But yeah, you do need a lawyer to go over any kind of contract, particularly to look for any red flags. And you can trademark your things on your own, but I'm trademarked. I've registered trademark for Boston Metaphysical. You might want to use an attorney for that, just to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
And I find that when you ask around for recommendations for attorneys, people are very, very quick to tell you the attorneys they love and warn you away from the ones they don't. So it's good to get recommendations from people you trust. So we do have to jump off, but quickly before we do, can you give people watching once again where they can find your Kickstarter projects if they want to back you and follow you right now?
Kickstarter.com, Boston Metaphysical Society, the Book of Demons, or bostonmetaphysicalsociety.com.
Awesome. Nathan?
And see, also on Kickstarter, In Pure Blood, Volume 3, IMPUREBLOOD. And I just threw up a link on the Discord channel. So there.
Thank you both for being here on the panel. It's been great to learn from you both. And I wish you great success with your campaigns.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you.
Thanks for hosting us.
Thank you. You did a great job.
Yes.
Thank you.